I'm Nick Labarro, critic for Nova Stream Network.
And I'm Georja Malt, founder of With G Digital and lover of literature.
And welcome to The Book Was Better, a monthly podcast with myself and Georgia where we read a popular book, we watch the film the book was based on, and we talk about the age-old discussion, what was better, the book or the film? Thank you all for coming back. Episode 5 now of the show. So we're basically...
It's a lot of reading.
A lot of reading. For an old fellow like me who doesn't read a lot of reading for me. But we've read some, we've read some great books. We've watched some great movies. We've read some books and we've watched some movies. So it's been a solid mix so far. And I think we've had a very good solid mix of genres of book as well. But I'm excited to dive into your choice today. But before we do that, obviously thank you everyone for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, hello. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts, we are pretty much there. So thank you all for your support, and the ever-growing numbers of people watching and listening is quite fun, and we're very thankful and grateful for all of that. So
and we hope you're starting to read along.
Well, actually, that's a great point, actually.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to find out if you are reading the books along with us. Let us know.
Now that we're organised enough to actually let you know.
That's true. Before we were smorgasbording the show. But now we've got our flow, we've got our rhythm, and we know kind of what we're doing. We're going to give you next month's book at the end of the episode.
Which I don't know, so it's going to be a surprise.
I'm excited to actually see your reaction to it.
Live react.
We'll have a countdown going at the bottom of the screen. It's like reaction to next book reveal. But no, first we should focus on the book at hand, which was your choice this month, Georja Malt. So why don't you let me know what we read and watched for this show?
So we're talking about Percy Jackson today, specifically the first book and first film. So I just thought I'd mix it up a bit. We're trying to read a wide array of books. Little Women was obviously our previous book. It was a bit more of like that period piece, more serious drama.
Totally. Like literary fame as well.
Yeah. So I just thought we'd do sort of more of like a Harry Potter-esque thing, and I'd take a bit of a walk down memory lane because I haven't read this book since I was 12 years old.
Right. Okay.
But
yeah.
It's funny because I actually have all these memories of first times when I was a kid, particularly of first time I've like seen books, like when I picked them off the shelf, like remembering the cover.
I totally have that with movies. I have that with movies.
Really?
Absolutely. Like I remember the first DVD I bought. I remember like especially going to a video store as well. Like I totally know what you're saying.
And I remember being in my grade 6 classroom, and we had like this small bookshelf, and I remember just kind of like putting my fingers across it. And then I pulled this book out, and it was like this red Converse, the old cover, not this book cover we got here, but it was like a red Converse with these white wings, and it was like that was like the original cover back in the day.
Yeah.
And it said something about like Greek gods.
Yeah.
And I just remember like opening it, and I just thought it was so cool and different to anything that I had sort of read. And
that's
it was like
really
just
cool,
this
actually.
great like adventure, and obviously as someone who, and then my love for Greek mythology and all things mythology grew because of that book.
Really?
So I was pretty much the only one in my school, I think, who would go to the section with mythology books and get them out from the library and blow the dust off them like Indiana Jones, finding
this
something in the
relic
tomb.
But
I just thought the stories were so amazing, and I just loved it at the time.
So was that this was the first one you picked out of the series? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was the first book.
It was the first book,
the first one. And
because there's how many books are there now? So Percy Jackson and the Olympians, there's
5 in that series,
right.
and then there's
and he's continued
series
on.
And there's like Egyptian gods, and it
right.
touches on all different sorts of things. So, I specifically remember that. I'm guessing you watched the film first.
So I saw the film first, and funnily enough, I actually didn't see the film until a couple of years ago, 2020. And the reason I did watch the film is because I used to be on a show called 10 Years On, where we would watch movies that released that week 10 years earlier. And with Percy Jackson coming out in 2010, we watched that. So that was the first time I'd seen it. And it wasn't memorable, I guess you could say. I actually wasn't even familiar with the book series, and I know that's probably shocking to so many people. Nick's not familiar with a series of popular books that aren't like Clifford the Big Red Dog or Harry McClary or something like that. But
you're a lot more well-read than you give yourself credit for, mate.
I'm too lazy to read, and I had to create a podcast for me to start reading. So I wasn't familiar with the books. I watched the film and I was like, oh yeah, the film was fine. And so the second time I'd watched this movie was for this show. This show
You're
here.
so welcome.
And hey, look, I'll tell you what. I remember. I know we'll break it down a little bit more, but I didn't hate the movie as much the second time around. But I think I knew what I was getting into.
Yeah.
Going
Your
into it.
expectations were.
And it was only a couple of bucks on Amazon, so I was like, worth it. The budget for the show is growing each week, and we could afford the Blu-ray copy of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, which has now actually been retitled. The print here only says Percy Jackson, but if you look at IMDb or Wikipedia and stuff, the movie is officially now Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Lightning Thief.
Which is too long.
It's a mouthful.
Anything,
It's a mouthful.
I actually have a separate special connection with the film.
Okay.
And it was because it was when I really felt like what I believed was love, fell in love for the first time.
In 2010?
Well, except for when I was 13 and I went and saw Prisoner of Azkaban in the cinema,
yeah,
as we all
totally.
know.
Yeah.
Daniel Radcliffe. But
we know about that.
It was something. It was a different time in my life. Like I was turning 15, and I remember
you're coming into maturity.
Yeah, that's
maturity,
right. A young lady.
You're coming into a woman. Yeah.
And then I remember I was at a sleepover with my friends, and I used to follow this gossip site called Just Jared.
Oh my God, yeah, I've heard of Just Jared.
And it had like all the gossip about like the Jonas Brothers and just like all this stuff on it. And then it was like
my sort of reading. Oh yeah.
And it was like, new cast for Percy Jackson film. And then here was this boy. This beautiful boy. This beautiful blue-eyed, dark-haired boy. And I was like, who are you?
I'm just going to find out in 2010 how old Logan Lerman was.
He had the bangs and everything that were in the time as well.
Logan Lerman had the quintessential 2010 haircut. If you were 15 and he was born, he's 3 years older than us, so he was 18 around when this movie came out. So 17 when filming. So I get it. The teenage heartthrob. Funnily enough, actually, for Logan Lerman, who plays Percy Jackson in this film, in some of the film facts I found, was nominated for Breakthrough Performance at the MTV Movie Awards. So it wasn't. I know
he didn't ask me to go with him.
And you know what? He probably took his mother, like a really nice, he does
have that sort of.
He's got that
vibe.
nice guy.
He's
vibe
a bit
about
apple
him.
pie, isn't he?
But do you know what? He did start as apple pie. But when we look at even potentially looking at further episodes on the show, he's in Perks of Being a Wallflower. He's great in Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yeah.
He's done films like, I really like Fury. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I've never seen that one. I think I've seen clips. But.
He's great. It's a World War II tank movie, but he's the new guy coming to the front lines, and he's really good in that. But I think he's like a genuinely great actor. He does a TV show on Prime called Hunters about Nazi hunters in the 1980s. And he's really great in that too. So he's definitely gone from apple pie, vanilla ice cream, to he's in a lot more, I wouldn't say weird stuff. He's in a lot more unique stories, I guess. Yeah. So, but when you're starting out, you got to go for that franchise money.
Oh, absolutely.
And you pick Percy Jackson.
Well, he did pick it.
He did pick it.
And I mean, I know I've read some stuff, but I'll leave the movie facts to you because I was like, one of the biggest differences I feel is obviously this huge gap in age where the characters in the novel are 12, whereas the characters in the movie are 16. And I believe there's a particular reason because I read that Chris Columbus, because he did it.
Right. Yeah, he did.
And you might not have seen this, but he didn't want to work with kids because he hated working with them on Harry Potter so much that they aged up the characters. I don't know if that's true, but
Chris has no filter and he's just like, I hate kids.
That's what I read. That's why they shifted it to young adult.
It very well could be.
And I think to their detriment.
I also think to their detriment as well. So we will get into that. Do you have anything about the book that you wanted to say?
I'm so sorry to all the fans.
No, don't be sorry.
But I don't.
No, that's okay.
And you know what? I'm just going to look. Let's just look at how many copies of this have sold.
Yes, okay. Let's see. We'll see how famous this book is, because obviously I've got the copy that I read and purchased for the show was like the third re-release or something of it as well. So normally if you're getting it a third re-release, you're doing okay.
Well, this says that in the Rick Riordan statistics on a website called Words Rated, so only the highest quality checks for our listeners.
Hey, it's basically FBI level investigation going on here.
180 million copies.
And that's a lot? That seems like a lot.
I think that's a lot.
That seems like a lot,
I can't
actually,
remember any of the previous ones we've said.
No, but
I think
like
Little
Harry
Women was like 400 million or something.
Yeah, and Harry Potter would definitely be up there too. So yeah. Little Harry, 180 million is not bad. And you know what? Obviously successful enough to spawn a franchise of books.
Multiple books.
It's one of those things. Actually, I did read when I was looking up Rick Riordan, who is the author. He came up with this book because his son, who also has, like Percy's character, ADHD and dyslexia, was really into Greek mythology at school and wanted his dad, who was also had studied Greek or taught Greek mythology in high schools, but was also a writer, to come up with stories for him for bedtime stories. So it's a really sweet, like,
look
humble
at you
beginnings.
go knowing about the book.
Real sweet beginnings. I'm a sucker for a good family story.
Movie. I knew something about the movie and you knew something about the book. Guys, we've done a live swap, non-planned.
We Freaky Friday'd this show. You've turned me into an avid reader. I don't know what's wrong with me anymore. And so he created this story. He created the character of Percy Jackson telling his son stories. And then he came up with enough, little vignettes to put them all together for a story. He actually submitted it under a pseudonym. I don't know what the pseudonym was because he was already like a respected writer. And they were like, if it's crap, I don't want my name to be attached to it. Took like 3 or 4 different publishers. And then, someone picked it up and here we go.
It's in a lot of ways, it's an odd concept for a kid's book, isn't it? Because Greek mythology is not PG.
No.
Not even PG. It's MA 15R.
There's some stuff going on in Greek mythology, whether it's violence, whether it's sex, whether it's
death.
Incest, death.
Also just like these heavy themes of what happens to you after you die.
Don't forget that Medusa turns people to stone when they look at her. Yeah. So it's there's some heavy stuff for kids going on in there.
Yeah, and I mean I think he handles it well, but there were for me moments where I was reading and I was a bit like, this is but I don't think as a kid I picked it up.
No, totally. And I think that's definitely when we talk about some of the issues we have, I see that with the book and the film.
Yeah.
Is that it doesn't really know who its audience is in that regard. So I can definitely see it's tough trying to kid down, I don't want to say dumb down because obviously those kids are smart, but like kid down something that is as adult orientated as Greek mythology.
And it's just interesting because I do know a lot of older people read these books, but unlike Harry Potter, there weren't moments that I read Harry Potter and I cringed and I thought that's a bit immature or that's a bit too childish for me. Even though it was fun and it was for kids, it didn't feel like that.
It still felt like a genuine story. There was,
But there was moments of this where I was like, I'm too old to be reading this.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
And it's like,
I get that.
It's just interesting how one kid's book can be so different in the
to
way,
another, and I guess it's it depends on the writer and who they believe they're writing it for. It'd be interesting to be like, obviously Rick Riordan had his 12-year-old son in mind.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to find out from, and she's probably said before, but who JK thinks her intended audience for Harry Potter was.
I actually don't know, but I feel like it was her.
Yeah.
She was just like, this is...
Bit of an Anna Todd, bit of a situation. I write books for me, and if you happen to like them, then bully for you. Billions of dollars for me. Maybe I'm going to start getting into writing. Maybe I'm going to write some dirty fanfic about something. That's where the millions are made. So in regards to the film, so you already mentioned that Christopher Columbus, I said that's the Harry Potter episode. It's Chris Columbus. Christopher Columbus was a man who founded some part of America.
Did I probably say Christopher?
No, you said Chris. I said Christopher. I think I was just trying to be formal on this very intelligent podcast. Mr. Christopher Columbus. Chris Columbus directed this film, and obviously this is the first time we've had a return director because he directed the first 2 Harry Potter films. So we've already seen what he can do as a filmmaker in Harry Potter for this show. Came out in 2010. It made $226 million at the box office on a $95 million budget. So that's okay.
It's okay.
I wouldn't say...
I think they probably thought it would be better, right? Because there's huge cast in this.
Huge cast in this, but also especially in that 2000 to 2000. This was in the peak of when Harry Potter was starting to wrap up. It made sense that these guys were probably we need the next big fantasy franchise ultimately. Usually when it comes to box office, especially for big, they would call tentpole movies, movies that hold up studios, is you take the budget with $95 million and you multiply that by 2 for print advertising and marketing and stuff like that. So you're looking at the studio would have spent almost $200 million on this movie.
Okay.
And it made $26 million profit.
It's a lot of effort.
Kind of. Yeah.
I mean, I would put that much effort in for 27 million, but I'm not a big Hollywood producer.
No, totally. Yeah. And you know what? I would do lots of things for $27 million, but
I wouldn't even want to hear
I'm not 20th Century Fox, or now dubbed 20th Century Studios, or Disney, who owns them now. So I wouldn't say this was a resounding success, but it obviously warranted enough for a sequel. A sequel came out, Sea of Monsters in 2013, which I have not seen.
I actually watched it directly after.
Oh, you did back to back. Oh my God,
I just got the Percy Jackson fever. It wasn't good, but I was just like, I think it was, one of those things where you're like, you've seen something, but you cannot remember a single thing about it, and it annoys you a little bit. You've got gaps in your mind. Yeah. So I was like,
I need to fill those gaps. And then how was the second film?
I wish those gaps had remained.
I wish I was ignorant. I wish I had left it all.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Not that good.
Not that great. All right. No. But I think Fox thought they would have had a winner on their hand because they actually optioned the rights for the movie, or for the book, in 2004, a year before the book came out. So like when before it was, when it was getting rewritten and finalized and stuff. And that's actually pretty frequent. Like if people will be looking for what the next big book is going to be, they will option the rights to that book. So Fox have been wanting to make this franchise since 2004 when they optioned it. So obviously it had a little bit of weight in the wings before it came out, but it came out 49% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's pretty fair.
Yeah, 53 audience score. So it's very much split down the middle of people who like it and don't like it. Like I said, nominated for 2 MTV Movie Awards, 14 Choice Awards, no wins. But the biggest thing I found, that I don't know if you know this, and I think this is very interesting, is that Rick Riordan was actually very critical of the film. Very critical of the script.
I'm not surprised, because I was going to say, out of all the books we've done
to me, 5 books feels like all the books. I was like, there's more out there.
It is by far the most different to any adaptation.
I agree. I absolutely. And we did The Outsiders, where we were like, this feels so different, but like,
no, this is like different, where it's like fundamentally they have warped things that shouldn't have been warped.
Yes, I'm very excited to break that down with you, because I absolutely agree. When I was watching, because I watched the film first, and then I was like, oh, and then I'm reading the book, and I'm like, this is so different. So different. We are in completely different places for some of the book. The characters feel completely different.
100%.
The quests they go on are completely different.
And the adversities they face are different.
Completely different.
The whole structure of the novel is essentially completely disrupted.
Totally.
And yes, that can go from minor details to some very major ones.
Yes.
But as I've spoken about a lot on this podcast, one of the things that is why books always win for me is that it's the beauty in those little details that make you feel connections, that make characters likable, that make you care about the story. And it's some of those elements that didn't get through.
That really didn't make it through to the film.
No.
Some of the things that Rick was talking about, he was very upset that they had swearing in the film. So I think Percy says shit like once or twice and stuff.
Yeah, I didn't even know.
No, and it's classic, like in a American PG.
To our podcast.
Yeah, I know. I was like, ugh. Sorry, Ricky boy. A couple of sweary words flying around sometimes here. Shooting out like lightning. But yeah, and because he thought Fox were really trying to market it to an older audience, that teenage audience, who were in love with Harry Potter at the time. Because obviously the audience grew up with Harry Potter. We were the perfect age to grow up with Harry Potter.
And you've just said it right there. Yeah. Grow up with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
And that was such a key part of Harry Potter's success and people's connection
that we
to the
saw
character
Harry Potter and Hermione and Ron all grow up in front of our eyes. Yeah.
Which in the books, you get Percy from 12 to 16.
Yes, right? Yeah.
So
it's funny where he finishes his journey in the books is where we kind of pick up the film age-wise anyway. Yeah. So like you said.
That's why that connection, we've come in too late.
Yeah. Yeah, because I just didn't find Percy as like exactly. Whereas in the book I definitely did a bit more. I was like, oh yeah, I'm happy for this kid to go on this adventure to clear his Sullen's name. But yeah, they wanted to make it more attractive to a YA audience, and then also just the convoluted plot additions that they have in there. The whole, I didn't realize this till I read it, but the whole section of the film about going after the pearls. And Rick was like, why? He's like, he's going after the Master Bolt already.
Yeah.
just let him do that. And they were like, oh, no, we just want some cool, fun stuff.
I feel like the film thought that having Percy, so Percy essentially needs to get these 3 pearls in order to escape from the underworld. Where his quest is he's going to the underworld to see Hades because he believes he's stolen.
They're all like, it makes sense. Hades has stolen the Master Bolt. Yeah. He's an evil little doer.
Yeah. Little man downstairs.
The man downstairs.
And so he needs these pearls to escape. But when he heads off the quest in the book, he doesn't really think about getting out of there.
No.
Like he's just going to
look, that's one of my
save his mum.
That makes sense in the book. Is that like if you're just going down there to save your mum and make sure the Master Bolt's down there,
and clear his name because he's in a lot of trouble. They think he's stolen it. They think his father Poseidon, who is the god of the sea, has put Percy up to stealing the lightning bolt to start a war between the gods. Yes. Essentially.
Which is a cool concept.
Yeah,
it's a really cool. And I think where the movie starts is with that conversation between Poseidon and Zeus, which I thought was really cool.
I actually quite liked that setup. It made sense for the
film. Because where the book starts, we get Percy in school, right? And just doing school kid things. But I liked the setup of the film. The thing that I noticed that was drastically different than as watching the film and then reading the book is that tone at the beginning of the film is so self-serious compared to the rest of the movie and the book entirely.
Yeah, I see that.
And I think my biggest problem with the movie is that it just didn't know what it wanted to be.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It took itself way too seriously at times. Like a lot of the family stuff I found was like played more for laughs. Like one of my favorite things in the book is that the stepdaddy calls him Smelly Gabe.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious. I'm like, that is such a 12-year-old thing to do.
Yeah.
Sure, it makes a little more sense that a 16-year-old's not going like, hey, Smelly Gabe. But that to me was like a little too serious in the movie. And I was like, oh, this isn't as fun. Like, I don't like the fact that he's like a drunk, abusive stepdad. Like, I know those are real things out there.
Yeah.
But when I'm watching a movie about a kid who's trying to find
half god and
he's a demigod and he's trying to find a lightning bolt, I'm like, I don't need the serious like domestic drama right now,
you're
guys.
So right. It was like they tried to have these serious of being like the Lord of the Rings serious moments, but like really with the Harry Potter fun.
Yes.
And it just like didn't
It was just all over the place because then you'd have like a scene that was serious like that and then it would have to finish. And I found this especially with Grover's character.
Oh, yeah.
The one-liner would always just finish with the joke at the end of every scene. And like the scene where he comes to the house and Gabe is like berating him and he's like, I'm taking my mom, getting out of here. Like Grover still managed to find a way to say jokes. And I love Brandon T. Jackson, the actor. I think he's a really great actor and I have an affinity for him because he's in Tropic Thunder and I think that's the funniest movie ever made. But even watching him in this, I was like, damn, dude. I was like, this is not.
Sometimes if you don't have the material to work with, though, it's like no amount of acting can.
No, that's it. And so because I wrote there, I guess we'll talk about like what we think the weaker parts are because I was like, it's just too childish for older audiences with those sorts of jokes, but then it's too dark for younger audiences.
Yeah.
Because one of my favorite parts of the movie is when Mrs. Dodds turns into the demon. It's creepy. It's like her character design is I don't know what creature she is. I can't remember, but like it's basically like a
harpy.
A harpy, right? And it's just like this demon-looking bat thing. And it was creepy. It was scary. It's a great jump scare in the film. Leads to a pretty fun action scene in the museum. And I was like, oh, that's my favorite part. Because I was kind of like, we firstly get to see what this was. It's a great introduction to the mythology of the world outside of the Poseidon and Zeus conversation. But we get to sort of see who Percy is as a person. And he tried to put up a fight, even though he didn't realize what his powers were at that point. And I was like, that's a cool part of the book, part of the movie, sorry. But it's too dark for like, I wouldn't show a 12-year-old that because it's kind of scary. And I'm like, I know I was watching scary stuff at that age, but like just in general, it's a little too much, I would say.
I think because
it
is trying to like, it keeps the themes that are written for 12-year-olds, but tries to present them for late teens. Totally. And that's that total thing. Like I said, they just tried to adjust it too much for young adults. But then, like there's still this childlike attitude, or like with things like calling him Smelly Gabe and being like, you know, doing such juvenile things in the book like that Percy doesn't really
it comes across as too childish in the film because they're still trying to capture some of that magic in the film.
But I think also like they really tried to make Logan Lerman more like the hero, whereas in the book I don't think Grover's funny. Percy's funny. Percy's sarcastic, and he's got a chewed on him.
He's got a lot of attitude, and I think that's one of the...
There are a lot in his mind. He's like, I wish I could say this, but like his snappy one-liners like had me giggling a bit throughout.
They did, and I actually really liked how the book is all told from his perspective. You know what I mean? Like it's told in the first person from Percy, and that was cool. Actually, I really enjoyed that. So you get a great sense of who Percy is in that. Whereas, you're right. The film really drops the ball on that because we don't really know who Percy is.
He seems so bland.
Generic hero.
Like he's very nice to look at, as I've already mentioned.
I get that. It's the haircut. Half of it's that haircut. It's the haircut.
It's like what Dan wanted to be in number 4 of Harry Potter, but didn't pull off.
Didn't pull that off at all. Yeah. Logan just had the thickness of the locks.
Something like, I mean, I do understand in the movie why some scenes were cut, because some scenes, like purely even imagining it, you're like the level of CGI was not there and is barely there now. Like,
totally.
We're talking about mythical Greek forces coming out of the sea. And like, you know, like there's a lot of strange things that
like
no matter
really
how
weird imagery.
No matter how well done it is, it's just strange for the human eye because it's odd to look at.
It's one of those things where like better described in your imagination.
Yeah, like the monsters and just all the Greek mythology elements of it, I think wouldn't have worked. And something I did like that the movie did was change Percy's main villain.
Yes, they did.
Because I actually liked that better.
Yep.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
In the book, Percy, who his big battle against is Ares, the god of war.
I do want to say as well, that is my favorite part of the book.
It's cool.
It's very, for me, I was like, if I was 12 reading, I'm like, this is really cool. Yeah,
you would.
Totally, yeah.
But from an adult, which, yes, I'm looking at it through the wrong lens.
No, I get it though.
How would a 12-year-old who's found out that he was half a god 2 weeks ago stand a chance against the god of war?
And not only stand a chance, actually stab him too, like actually overcome the god of war.
It's just ridiculous. Like it just would never happen.
It's wild.
And I think in the film having Luke as the villain, which Luke does come out as having betrayed him in the book, but it's there's no fight.
No, there's no fight, and it's sort of like one of those. It's almost like a epilogue sort of reveal kind of thing
that leads you into the next one.
Book.
I'm like he could have kind of stayed undercover for a bit longer.
I feel like letting the audience know and not us know would have been cool. Like that would have been like, you know, we get to see something. I guess that's tough in the book though, because it's all from Percy's point of view, right? So
they could have done those things where Percy's dreaming and it's like, did I just hear Luke say he was you know those fever dreams
standing outside as well. I was like, it was me. I stole the Master Bolt.
It's like in 50 Shades where Anna has whole chapters, like a whole chapter of where she's just like, Christian thinks she's asleep, but she's like, did I dream him telling me about his abusive mother? Like they could have done that.
I can't wait. I can't wait to do that on this show.
But I just thought Percy facing off against Luke, same age. Luke definitely has more experience, but Percy overcoming him as a child of the big three
and that's the hero's journey, right?
Yeah,
like overcoming the adversity and learning to, you know, that the power comes from within sort of stuff. Like,
but it's not unrealistic.
No,
him taking down Ares.
Pretty unrealistic. Very unrealistic.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing. I think I'm the same as you. I liked the reveal in the film when Luke is revealed to be the villain. I had this issue as well. I wrote a note down about the same thing happening in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I just can't take villains with little wings on their feet seriously. I just look at it and I go,
it looks a bit silly.
Like, really? I was like, I get that that's like the Greek mythology, but I'm like, surely we can update it to be a little cool, not these just like little wings on the Achilles heel, but
I know what you mean. That's what I'm saying. Like so much is visually just not.
It doesn't translate as well. Yeah, but Luke as the villain in the film is great, and I still think that even talking about the CGI and the visualization of stuff, there are moments of the movie where it is pretty cool. I can't remember what the creature's called again, but when they fight the dragon Hydra, they fight Hydra,
that's not in the book though.
Not in the book, but I thought in the movie, that's a really cool action scene.
It looked cool.
I thought it was well done. It felt very tense until he got the winged feet. But up until that point, it was really cool. So there's elements that have been added into the movie that I think were really cool. But there is a disjointed feeling to it all. I also feel the same about the book. I do think the book is very disjointed. And another thing I didn't like about it is that if this is a book that is aimed for like 12-year-olds, it's long. It's a lot, not necessarily page, like it's 300 page time, but like the story is so stretched out.
Now that you've said about it being originally in the form of short stories, that makes so much sense to the structure because there's too many little things.
It's all about little journeys and they're quite repetitive.
And you're like, another monster, get past the monster, get closer towards Hollywood.
But he doesn't really like learn new, like sometimes he'll develop new abilities or he'll learn a new power, but it doesn't happen every time.
It's like watching Ash Ketchum battle his way through regions and then the next season he loses to like a level 5 Pokemon and you're like, you learnt nothing.
Exactly.
That's like what this is like.
That's what reading Percy Jackson was like.
Yeah.
Watching it kind of the same too, because it just felt like a series of disjointed little missions that they had to go on.
That ends up with him almost dying, finding water. His dad helps him through some impassive way.
Yeah, that was that was odd too, actually, when Poseidon comes back and he's like, Dad. And I'm like, you barely know this guy.
Well,
like, Poseidon's a bit of a dick in the movie.
Well, I think in the book he's even less affectionate.
Yeah.
To be honest, because
sense,
like he's more cool. Like he definitely looks at him a little bit more like
well, because
with a dude, like he's not like, at least in the movie he's a bit warmer towards his like reactions to him.
I feel like Poseidon in the book is kind of like realized that he committed that sin. He's like, I wasn't supposed to have a son. Like same as Zeus having a daughter. You kind of like, well, they broke their oaths of like.
Well, and he also, I think, knows that he's set Percy up for a miserable life because
totally, he feels responsible for it.
Have that great of a life.
It's very interesting, actually, you say that because but it's interesting that we had to discuss it though because it didn't really come across like that in the book totally. But like once you break it down a little bit, you kind of go, oh, that may be why, but it's not actually.
As a kid, you just be like, oh, his dad doesn't love him.
Yeah, it's like Poseidon,
You're
please.
Like, I've got enough of that in my real life. I was like, love you, Dad.
I'm like, Poseidon, Papa, wait, who, where am I? And that's kind of that's just kind of how I felt with the both film and book. The stories were just so all over the place. Like. I remember the first time watching it and the whole Vegas scene. And I was like, oh, the idea of them being chemically trapped in a casino, sucking their energy out and not knowing what time is in there. I was like, shit, firstly, that's just an allegory for casinos. I think Rick Riordan hates casinos. Time wasters and you don't know how long you've been in there. You don't know whether it's day or night. And I'm like,
it's a good message for all of us. It's a good message for you.
Well, it's a great message.
Get off the pokies.
It's a great message for me. A degenerate gambler, but 12-year-old me was not a degenerate gambler. I didn't need a lecture about how casinos are soul-sucking entities. Like, my parents could teach me that. I didn't need that to come across I didn't need that to come across in my Greek mythology fiction novel.
Yeah.
But like the scenes like that, and then like the battles against the Furies and stuff. To me, I was just going this, and this, reading this, and it's all the same. The best part of the movie did was focusing on Medusa, I think. It's a cool scene.
It's the best scene and like one of the best fights in the book too.
Totally,
because it feels different. Like it's a bit more strategic.
They have to, exactly. It's not just how can I battle outsmart. They actually had to, like I said, strategically outsmart Medusa, and it pays off. Like it's a really fun part of the book, but it's padded by battle with the other Furies and then going to Vegas and then battling that.
And that scene where they're in with the zoo animals.
There's
just so many little incidences along the way. And that, do you know what I found one of the worst ones? The train station one with the Chihuahua dog and the lady who was the monster. That chapter went forever.
But that's the exact same thing with Mrs. Dodds. Like the exact same thing. It's just someone who you thought was someone else turned out to be a monster. Yeah. And you're like, okay, we get it. There's monsters in this world. They've crossed over from Greece. Like,
they've migrated. They migrated over on the Mayflower.
Like, they're all demons. No, we love, if any of our Greek listeners, we love you all. We don't think you're all monsters. But like, it's just to me, like the pacing, and I've never really ever thought about the flow and the pacing of a book before.
Yeah.
But that's how I felt reading Percy Jackson. I was like, there was just times I was reading, I'm like, I've read this.
Yeah.
It's a different character in a different location, but I've read this.
It's been so long since I've read the whole series, so I can't say this with 100% certainty, but I was a bit older and I feel like that lessens.
Yeah.
I think because first one really is a collect. That short stories make so much sense.
There's a bit more narrative format. Like it sort of zones. It makes me feel like he was writing this like it could be the only one. He's like, let's pack everything cool that I've had an idea for it.
Yeah, so true. So I think like with the book though, if we're going to talk about something positive,
yes,
with it,
please,
like
absolutely.
There's just the more lore around the Greek mythology and the camp and the campus.
A lot of time is spent at the camp, which is cool.
Yeah.
Like it's a really, I like the
interesting.
location. Yeah,
like it's
totally.
well done, and like at the
But it's where we get like Annabelle and stuff as well. You know what I mean? Like we get other characters who are interesting. Who as well, I just love Alexandra Dario. In general.
But and I do love her. I think Annabeth was one of the worst.
Annabeth, sorry, I call her Annabelle. Yes, right.
Annabeth was one of the worst done characters.
The adaptation to film,
especially in Sea of Monsters, which I know you haven't watched the sequel, but she just has a nothing role. It's like terrible. But anyway,
Percy's the hero, right? It's like,
she just is like a nothing girl. And it's like she's so helpful on Percy's quest.
She is. I felt like she was helpful in the film. Like definitely, she to me in the film Annabeth was the character who I was like, oh, you are guiding this whole journey, right?
Do you know what though? I Snapchatted Rhiannon when I was watching it, and I don't know if you were with her or she mentioned it. They look like brother and sister.
Logan Lerman and Alexandra Daddario.
They look like, what's the one where they look like identical twins.
Wow. We're going back.
But like at the sword scene, they both have blue eyes, both have dark long hair. And there was this
eyebrows on them too, actually.
Scene when it went between them, and I was like, this is like watching a brother and sister having an incest relationship.
It's because they look so alike.
In the second one, they put like ugly blonde streaks in her hair
because they're like, we thought too many people said they look like siblings.
No, and then they also hired a girl who looked exactly like whoever is casting this loves blue-eyed, brown-haired people. Like it's crazy. There's a real niche for it in Hollywood. I was like, oh my god, it's me.
I honestly can't. It's like, wait a second. You're like, I'm Percy Jackson. I can't promise you that I'm going to watch the second film and
that's all right, man.
And we can talk about it later. I can't promise that. So,
but yeah, you just don't get Annabeth's backstory, do you?
No, totally, not at all.
Like she's had a complicated relationship with her dad.
Yeah.
She's had a pretty tormented past.
I think there's a line of dialogue in the film about it, but it's not enough to be like, and it's like those blink and you miss it sort of lines of dialogue anyway.
Yeah, and I just also it kind of was. It was cool in the book because you actually don't know Poseidon is Percy's dad first
for a while.
And then Poseidon kind of claims him, but also it doesn't make much sense either that they don't know he's Poseidon's son. So it's like, but it just kind of like made a bit more like exciting, I guess, to be like, who is he? Like, whereas the movie
there's a bit more of a mystery of the book where the movie was just
straight into
like
this sea cabin.
He's like,
no
my son, Percy. And you're like, oh, all right, cool. Thanks for that.
He's the sea god's son. Yeah.
Another thing I liked about the book while we're talking about positives, I love some of the chapter titles. And it just goes to
hilarious.
It just goes to that juvenile attitude as well. Like I picked out some of my favorites.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. So I became a Supreme Lord of the Bathroom where he first uses his water powers. I thought was fun. I battle my jerk relative, which is the battle with Ares, which was great.
Yeah.
I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher.
So that's a good one.
It just has that teen punk attitude to it, right? And that's what I loved about it. So.
And it's also a bit random, which I think is our
super
humor.
random.
Like we take a zebra to Vegas. Like
it's just like it's hilarious,
it's
right?
It's just like funny little.
It's just it catches you off guard and it makes you giggle, and that's what I think I liked about those elements.
The book was funnier than the film for sure.
Totally. One thing I do want to quickly bring up, if that's all right, is the portrayal of ADHD and dyslexia in the book, right? Because obviously Rick Riordan writing it for his son who had ADHD and dyslexia, they felt like it felt a bit more genuine in the book. It felt
trying
like
to make it like a superpower. Like it's your superpower. It's nothing to be
not to be embarrassed by it or upset by it. But it came from a lot more. I felt a lot more of the sincerity of it with the book. Whereas in the movie, he says like 4 times, he's like, well, I've got ADHD and dyslexia. I'm a loser. I'm like, yeah, I get that as a character you are upset by these things you have. But then when they show him have it, when the Greek letters come up and he goes like, I'm like, that's not an accurate portrayal of ADHD or dyslexia. You don't shake it to hyper focus. You know what I mean? Like, but that's what I mean. Like in the movie, I felt like, are you taking the piss out of it? Like a little bit.
I think it's just like a classic movie. Like sometimes they go visually over the top to try to portray a point, and it just.
But they did that, and then they had him keep going like, I have ADHD and dyslexia. I'm like. Yeah, Percy, we get it. But that's what I mean in the book, when it comes from the source and you know the reasoning why Rick Riordan does it, it feels sincere. It feels so much more genuine. And that's I actually really appreciated it in the book as well. When, because a 12-year-old kid who does have ADHD or dyslexia reads that, they'll be like, oh yeah, I it's not a disability. Like it can be a superpower for me. Like as a kid at that age, you're thinking of that. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on it, but
no, but I didn't. But now that you've said it, I 100% see where you're coming from.
Just the movie.
It's not good.
So stupidly.
Yeah, it's not good.
So stupidly. And I don't like how the film ended, or its third act climax is the whole end of the world battle in New York sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like I like where the book ended in the forest with Luke, and I liked the battle with Ares.
I thought a beach battle would have made more sense. And like cinematically, a storm over a stormy beach is like
would have been awesome,
an
right?
amazing area.
But they're like on the rooftop of this New York skyscraper, and I'm like, this is boring. I've seen this in every movie ever.
Just watch a Marvel movie.
New York's always in danger, and something comes from the sky. So it's kind of like it just felt very generic. And by the time, and especially by the time I was at that point in the movie, because I think it clocks in just under 2 hours, which trying to fit that much in 2 hours is a tough. That's why Harry Potter was 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
and they still left stuff out. But like. By the time I got to that point in the movie, I was just like, fucking this just needs to end. Like, I'm not into the action anymore. I'm not into the story anymore. It's kind of just one of those things where you had an opportunity to end it strong and you still chose generic. Yeah. And that's pretty rough.
No, I 100% should have been at the beach.
Should have been at the beach. And just back to Smelly Gabe, I love Joe Pantoliano. Like, I know the scenes are really good. He's just a great asshole.
Yeah, he was funny.
Him storming in and asking for beers. And then obviously what I liked the post-credit scene of the film, or the mid-credit scene, where he goes to the fridge to get the beers and Medusa's head is in there. Like, that was pretty great. It's like a good bit of justice. Yeah. Very dark. Like, I don't know if you felt this way.
Stone. It's like,
it turns into stone, but then because it cuts to black, and you can still hear the stone taking over and him taking his last breath. And I'm like, you just turned a really funny moment into something really, really dark.
Oh, it's messed up.
Super dark. But I was like, I giggled initially because I'm like, oh, that's great. Revenge. And then I'm like.
But just the last breath.
Oh, I was like, oh, he's dying. like, yeah, so.
Yeah, no, I get. But that's what back to the whole point of the themes are so strange to be put for children.
Yeah.
And even just like the whole concept of death is so prevalent.
It's so prevalent.
Also the misery of death. Oh, yeah. Only heroes get to go to this blessed island and the rest wander forever
and
namelessly in the fields of asphodel. And that's it. And it's like, I mean.
Which is cool in Greek mythology.
I'm like, sometimes when I'm stressed, I wouldn't mind a little mindless field stroll.
Just,
but not for eternity.
Not for eternity, and not as a 12-year-old reading a book. No, without a picnic. Bring a basket, bring a blanket.
Bring some
cheese. Just cheese and wine at least as a bare minimum.
There we have it.
Just before because you did mention it earlier and we didn't talk about it, the cast in the film.
Yeah.
We got Uma Thurman.
It's a massive cast.
Uma Thurman as Medusa. We've got Pierce Brosnan in there as Mr. Drunnen, I think.
No. He's the teacher, but his name's Chiron or
Chiron. Chiron or something.
The
centaur. You've got Sean Bean as Zeus. You've got old mate from Maid of Honor. I can't remember his name. As Poseidon. And I only remember him from Maid of Honor because Maid of Honor is actually Rhiannon's one of her favorite movies.
Who is he in that?
He's the main guy. He's the Irish dude.
Oh,
the Irish dude.
No, the one from Grey's Anatomy. Mick Steamy or whatever.
Steamy,
or Mick Dream. I get them confused.
Is he? He's in something else too. I'm trying to remember. But he
looks so different because I
super different, right?
know him mostly from Maid of Honor as Rhiannon, and I have watched that many a time.
So because Rhiannon loves it, and the first time she ever tried to show it to me, I fell asleep in the first 10 minutes. So I've always promised we'd watch it, and we watched it, and I was like, I actually thought it was really funny. And then like literally 2 nights later, I'm watching this. And I'm like, oh my God, it's that guy.
There he is.
I was like, hey. I was like, you had a really mildly successful film career. But I think he's actually a good actor. I think he's really good.
I think he did well in the part.
I think he did well too. So it's just got this cast of people who like you would think massive name actors would never touch this, but then you kind of realize as you get older, people got mortgages to pay. So that's kind of how I feel about that.
I think everyone was looking for that sweet Harry Potter
totally
spot, weren't they?
That's exactly right.
What will be the next Harry Potter?
Exactly.
And I don't think there's ever been anything.
Nothing's come really close. Like honestly, for me, the closest thing had a completely different audience. That was Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? Like that's
being a phenomenon.
Being a fantasy phenomenon that everyone was captivated by.
Yeah.
But like in regards to like young adult fantasy, nothing has really, and everything's TV now as well anyway, like even in saying that. So even Harry Potter, even this, like this is coming to Disney+.
That will be interesting to see this as a show. I think he's 12, he's younger. I think.
Do you know the actor, the kid who's playing Percy Jackson?
That one,
the Adam Project.
Ryan, yes.
And he's awesome in that movie. He's really good.
I mean, I think it has a way better chance. I will watch it just because I'm a nostalgic fan of the series, and I think the way the book is structured will work so much better.
Episodic works better
episode
way.
Totally. Like, so I'm keen to see it, and I think CGI has come along even further. Yeah. So maybe they'll do a better job of bringing these visions off the page, and I'm excited to see it.
So Percy Jackson and the Olympians. So I think it's coming out next year.
Percy Jackson, the Olympians, and the Lightning Thief, book 1. No, I'm just
Part 1, the Lightning Thief, Part 1. I think there's 8 episodes they said they're releasing. And the kid Walter Scoble, who's playing him, is awesome. Did you watch The Adam Project?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
He was funny in that. He was really good. A great
was.
young Ryan Reynolds. So I think he has that attitude that Percy has in the book.
Hoping we get that sass, hoping we get those like the more rich characters, hoping there might be some parts of it that are too immature for me, but hopefully there's kids out there who will enjoy having a great fantasy show.
If it's faithful to the book's like tone and vibe and attitude, then perfect. Like, you know, that's you can definitely respect it for that. So we'll see if they can get it right this
Fingers
time.
Crossed.
But in saying that, Georja Malt, I think we know what your answer is for the 5th time in a row. What was better, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, the book or the movie?
It was the book for me. Yeah. Is it the best book I've ever read? No.
But comparatively.
But I still think there's great elements in it for kids. And it had an original idea. It's not dystopian like so many others are.
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of was a bit educational in ways about Greek mythology and opening kids up to other cultures and storytelling. And so I think it has value in a lot of ways. So the book for me was by far better than the film.
I'm the same. Book was better. I think, but it's chalk and cheese sort of thing. It's a tomato sort of thing for me, where I didn't necessarily love either of them. Yeah. But you're right. The book, for me at least, had more of my favorite moments than the movie did. I just think structurally they're both all over the place. Yeah. But that fight with Ares is really cool. Like as a 12-year-old kid, if I saw that in the movie play out that way, the movie could have had a chance of like at least being a contender. Yeah. But it didn't. And that's why. And I think it's interesting going back, like you said, in a more nostalgic lens with these sorts of things to be like, maybe it was great when we were 12 and maybe it will be great for 12-year-olds growing up now. So, you know, it'd be interesting to gauge what people who are going to rediscover it next year when the show comes out have to say about the book as well. So some interesting things. So that was Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief for episode 5 of The Book Was Better. Next month. So
what do we do?
The countdown's on. So we've done Percy Jackson, we've done Harry Potter, we've done my last pick, which was a really sweet novel in Little Women.
I loved it. I loved it so much.
I am going to the complete other end of the spectrum. I'm about to
it's not a horror.
No, it's not a horror. But it could be about the horrors of life. And maybe even about the horrors of consumerism. We are doing on the complete other end of the spectrum for next month Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club.
I have never read Fight Club.
I've never read the book.
I've seen the film.
Love the film. Dark as hell. We might just have to wear all black, put some eyeshadow on.
Yeah, I still think we should start making this themed.
I think that would be a lot of fun, actually. We'll figure something out. If in a month I can get Brad Pitt shredded, I'll just do the whole thing shirtless.
Frosted tips?
Oh my God, we could actually.
I don't know if he has that in it, but it's such
he has the
blonde spiky moment.
Like some soap everywhere and stuff. So, but look, this will probably be the darkest book we've done so far. It's definitely going to be the darkest movie we've done so far.
Yeah, interesting.
So a bit of a tonal shift for us from the gleeful ripping apart of Percy Jackson to the why consumerism and what's the purpose of life, themes of
mental
Fight Club.
health. Severe mental health.
Severe schizophrenia and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'm excited. I haven't watched the movie in probably like 5 or 6 years.
I've seen it once years ago. I remember loving it.
Yeah.
And
Great
I
movie.
didn't even know the twist.
Oh, that would have been, okay, that's cool
And
going
I was
into
like,
it.
oh.
And I've never read the book as well, so I'm
Okay.
excited to read the book. So please read the book and watch the film before next month's episode. And then if you have enjoyed this episode, please subscribe of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube. We thank you all for your support. As always, if you have any suggestions or anything for what you would like us to cover on the show, let us know. Georgia, where can they find you on the internet?
Yeah, so just go to Instagram and I'm at withg.co.
And I'm at nicksflicksfix on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time, thanks for watching The Book Was Better.
Thanks, guys.